Good day, everybody. It's Trent Klarenbach with the Klarenbach Special Crops Report, and today we are going to have the second video of a series of reports on the Canadian special crop market. We're going to look at the fundamentals and the technical side of Canary Seed, and today's guest is David Nobbs of Harvest Grain. So we talked about green lentils here a few weeks ago, Dave, and that video proved to be quite well. I guess it kind of played out the way we thought it was going to play out.
Yeah, I mean, when we discussed or spoke about the green lentil market, we didn't really understand that the volume or the yields, how the yields were going to shake out, and we've had a couple weeks of kind of turmoil, and I kind of thought we'd see a 25-cent Eston by Christmas, and we seen it 25 Eston 10 or 12 days later, and it's even continued lower than that. So really surprising for the markets to kind of correct that quickly. But we've had a lot of high prices over the last number of years, and I guess maybe a guy should have expected that quick correction. But it really comes down to the yield, and it comes down to how growers are going to market it. I mean, they produce the crop, and the trade didn't produce the crop. That the growers produced the crop, and we're simply in an oversupply situation now. So the growers will decide how it trends.
Yeah.
So
Are we seeing something similar in the Canary Seed market then?
yeah, the Canary Seed market has almost in sympathy kind of come down, at the same time before harvest even, right? And the green lentil markets were trending lower before harvest too, right? I think the market and the growers knew the crop was decent. It's just getting those firm yields really kind of solidified it. So I think some of our damage has already been done in the Canary Seed market, and I guess time will tell. How if we go lower yet or not. I mean, we're at about 22 cents a pound. I believe we were probably 25, 26 when we spoke last, maybe 27 on Canary.
Yeah.
When we were speaking a few weeks ago. It's been significant. There's got lots of kind of side notes to this market, and history's kind of repeating itself. I feel a bit like my dad now when I start talking about stuff that happened 20 years ago, or but these cycles are coming back. And the unfortunate part is our input prices as a grower aren't corrected, right? And you're not going to have 2004 prices for combines, so it's going to be challenging,
Yeah.
to say the least. I think I'll maybe give a bit of a history, in the time that I was in the industry, and what's happened in price, some real high level stuff, and then we'd talk a little bit about the field counts that I did this summer.
Yeah, you got a unique process with the field counts, but yeah, let's start with the history.
Yeah, so I started in 02, in the Canary Seed trade, and 01 and 02 we had a couple 40-cent years, not unlike kind of 21, 22, 23. And we had a significant drought 2 years in a row, really dropped production. We were down to 500-600 pounds in those years per acre, and not massive acres, but significantly more acres than we'd had in the last number of years. Our yield on Canary Seed has trended up over time, we're probably have a more stable yield now at 1,200 pounds, 1,100 pounds for an average yield, or 1,200 pounds, whereas then we were more of a 700-pound yield per year. And then in drought years, it got down to 500 pounds or 400 even. In some cases, people didn't even combine in those years. So I came into the office from my chem industry job, and walked into a 40-cent Canary Seed market, right? And it was up and down for a couple of years, but it took until about 04 before we really had big acreage. And then In '04, we had 860,000 acres. And that's unbelievable. I mean, the last 5 years, we've been around 300,000 acres, right?
So in '04, 800,000.
860 was the number, if I can just confirm that. Yeah, 860,000 8 years. So that was the year we had that Bolorama frost night that we talked about in an earlier video. And so what it did, though, was it cut the yield per acre. It didn't cut the quality, right? So on the eastern side of the province, there was huge acreage that year. And that's entirely what got me interested in doing these field counts, was that there was so much acreage, and, people said, it's not going to produce anything. And that wasn't the case. What it produced was a light bushel weight canary seed. Okay. So when canary seed freezes, it drops the bushel weight. It doesn't drop the quality for the most part. And, so we were able to buy that product, and we were shipping a lot in bags, and we had to actually get a bigger bag to get 100 pounds in the bag, right? Because of the bushel weight. But it's still traded, it's still sold. And that market kind of started to spike up at the frost, and then it turned around and kind of went down for a couple of years. So in that year, we had about 60,000 ton carry in and a 300,000 ton production, which is exactly, incidentally, what I think we have this year. Just happens to line up. We got about 60,000 tons we're carrying in from last year. And some might say that's 30, and some might say it's 40, whatever the number is, it's kind of irrelevant. And I expect we're going to produce 300,000 as we did that year, on half the acreage, though, because of the yield.
Is that partly because of that acres? Was it concentrated more on the west side of the province at that time?
At that time, it's always been about 40% of the acreage in the Regina area.
Okay.
40% in West Central, and about 20s in the Northeast. The 20 in the Northeast has been growing. Maybe back then it was only 10, and maybe it was 45. Southwest Saskatchewan doesn't grow a lot of canary. Northeast Saskatchewan doesn't grow a lot of canary. It's really in that Regina Southeast, Moose Jaw, Regina Southeast, and then, in the West Central region from Kyle to Kinnersleys is the bulk of your acreage. Those are your two really critical zones. The Northeast has produced really high, 40, 50 bushel crops in the last couple of years. This year they've got some drought concerns, and those yields are come down this year. Hudson Bay had 3 inches of rain this year, and that's just unheard of in a growing season for those guys. So it's all proving out, the number is kind of the similar number we have, and our typical demand's 150,000 tons. When we got to 55 cents, that demand number came down. We had a lot of competitors come in, but the history is kind of repeating itself. And then in 2005, acreage dropped in half to 400,000 something, but we had 1,000-pound crop instead of the 700-pound crop. Okay. So now we had 400,000 tons of available product for the market. And a lot of that product in 04, 05 is the hidden inventory that was available to the market for 15 years, right? And that hidden inventory is what I believe spilled the boat in 21 when we went from 55 and we took a sharp drop in the fall downward, because this inventory started coming out of the woodwork into the market.
And some of that inventory is
15 years old. Yeah. I mean, it's still fine. We still shipped it. And nobody, you couldn't tell the quality difference between the stuff you're growing today. We didn't even know when the trucks come to the plant how old it was, but you get talking to some of these guys after, and I really thought in 19 I could start to recognize that we were buying that crop, and so people were starting to give up. And then in 21, when the market really rallied, they really gave up, and so they held product from 04, it's maybe 15 cents. 05, it dropped down to 05, 06, it dropped down to maybe 8 cents a pound. and they held that to 19 and 20 and 21, and were rewarded for that. I'm not sure it really offsets the interest in bin space cost, but yeah, storage cost. But, they were still rewarded with that. And, holding Canary is a common theme in both for destination buyers. They will stock up in low price times, but also for farmers, they'll speculate on it. And so in 06, we got down to 8 cents roughly. We had, I got to refer to my numbers here. In 05, we had 400,000 tons of stocks, and we were shipping 150 a year. But 07, the market took off, right? And we climbed all the way up to 30 cents a pound, and we still had 2 years of supply in the bins. And that's really the take-home message, is that, the value of Canary seed is affected by other crops or other, other information in the market. It's not just about S&Ds, right? And it took me a while to understand that, because in 07, when the market was starting to rally, it just didn't make any sense, right? We had tons of stocks, but, growers decided to hold everything. And, the price of corn took off. I think it went to $8, didn't it, in the ethanol boom?
I don't know that number offhand, but yeah, ethanol added about 25% in my back of the envelope math to the price of corn.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I thought it went
Well, it did go higher.
Yeah. So, and a lot of our shipments are into Mexico, and they have, 25% of our market demand is Mexico, and Mexico has a corn-based diet, right? So as the price of corn went up, all those prices just took off, right? And then we kind of peaked that, and things kind of relaxed, and then we went for years with, producing about 150,000 tons and exporting 150,000 tons, and the market sat for years at 25 cents, right? It didn't stay at that elevated ethanol boom price, but it relaxed, but it was still strong, right? A long, long time. And, we had less growers, but we had continually higher production per acre over time. And, so we get into 2021, of course, the price goes to the moon. But again, those hidden stocks still affected that value and brought us down, to maybe 45. And now it's been trending lower for 3 or 4 years. Yeah, right. I mean, we just keep kind of getting cheaper every year. And last year we had approximately 290,000 acres. That was a pretty significant jump from 256,000 the year before. So our acreage came up, and our demand still hasn't returned to 150. It's more like 135 in the crop year we just finished, 135,000 tons. I believe as we go into lower values, that number of exports will continue to rise, and we'll be back to 150,000 tons. And
As the buyers start stockpiling.
Yeah. Or just are less afraid of owning stocks, right? Because a buyer of product, he says, okay, I'll take 2 cars delivered to Mexico in December, and here's the price. But for the last 4 years, those prices have generally moved lower, right? So this year, and you're seeing this in Eston's, you're seeing this in everything, by the time that product gets to the buyer, he can buy it cheaper, right?
Yeah.
And so their replacement cost continues to go lower, and that has scared them, right? And that's why we have had very limited demand here in the last few months, is they anticipated this drop before, the grower anticipated it. And, they're kind of tired of getting beat up, right? It'd be like if we went out and bought fertilizer every month for the next 12 months, and every month the next month it was cheaper.
Yeah.
right? I mean, how would that affect your psyche, right? Yeah. No, so so then when I look at, what happened in 2025, in the spring we had wheat prices at $7 a bushel. We had canary prices at $15 a bushel, 30 cents, 15.50 a bushel. It's about 31 delivered, 30 fob. So our canary price to wheat was double, right? And so I and even Durham, this even competed with Durham. So we've seen increases in the West Central region. We've seen it in the Southeast. And in the Northeast, the rally in the spring curbed the acreage. So yeah, I don't think the acreage went up as much in the Northeast. It probably went up some, but it didn't go up the way it did in these other regions. And I truly believe it was the canola rally that held those acres back. So when I started doing my driving this summer, previous years I would see 50 to 55 fields on these specific highways of Canary, right? This year it was, I never remember this number off the top of my head. It was about 79 fields.
50, that's better than
60% increase. I was thinking it was 80, but it was a 60% increase in acreage. And I didn't see that trend in the Northeast. I seen that trend more in Southeast and West Central, right? And that's what leads me to believe that canola, and we had a seed grower tell us this as well, that canola was really the driving factor. That spring rally had people canceling seed sales.
Oh yeah,
seed purchases of Canaryseed. So if we get into, do I think that acreage is up 60%? No, I don't. I mean, Stat Canada said 10%. I think the number is 30%. We still don't have Saskatchewan crop insurance insured acreage values yet. I checked this morning, and those results aren't out yet. But that'll be the final determination of where the acreage went. Stat Canada came out with a production report. I think they said 1,100 pounds an acre. I'm using 1,600 pound an acre.
Really? Almost 50% more?
Yeah.
45% more?
Again, anything coming out of there is just, it's about as useful as Ag Canada production data. That data is just as horrible.
And why is that?
I don't know if they use a dartboard on these minor crops or what. I mean, it's all based on modeling. It's less surveying. But, the unfortunate thing is that when these numbers are off, they send a signal to the grower, that's not realistic, right? I mean, yeah. Good. And Canary's notorious, right? For when they were doing a full survey, they were notoriously low on acreage, and production year after year after year. So, after a while, you just got just kind of ignore their numbers and go with what you think, and try and analyze and understand. So my numbers today put me to a 300,000 ton production and about, 60,000 ton carry in, kind of like 04. We're not going to 15 cents. We're not going to 8 cents. Don't get me wrong. But we have a 10% increase in acreage, as they said, is just wrong. Right. So I think we're closer to 380,000 acres with 1,600 pound crop. Yeah. So it's, there's no question it's a supply, it's an oversupply situation. And, how we move out of that oversupply or out of these lower prices will be determined by some catalyst from outside the Canary Seed trade. Like, yeah, we're going to kick out Hungary. We're going to kick out Argentina, possibly. Like Argentina seeds in July, roughly, and harvests in December, January. They've been filling the Brazilian market. Historically, the Brazilian market is 25% of our demand. Early part of my career, about 25% went into Brazil, 25% went into Argentina, 25 into Europe, and 25 scattered around other parts of the world.
Yeah.
And you know, the market's really changed. We have a phyto issue in Brazil. So that Argentinian production is going both officially as an export into Argentina, but it's also going into Argentina through the gray market because of duties, export duties in Argentina. You know, some of that product is sliding in the night into Brazil. Yeah, right.
What are some estimates on that volume?
I think officially about 20,000 tons, unofficially about 30 to 40,000 tons of exports. They're competing with us in Chile, Indonesia. You know, they were pricing into Europe at one point in the last crop year. So, you know, they're starting to affect our abilities in some markets. And so what is the price matrix and how did that affect the summer plantings in Argentina? You know, I'm going to guess that the market wasn't telling them to increase their acreage.
Right.
You know, and you know, in some of the, you know, in the pulse markets, for instance, just like we seen in 16, 17, we seen everybody in the world wrap up to go pulses for India. We've seen that this year. I'm hoping that we don't see that in Argentina. And, you know, at some point, maybe Brazil will have to relax their phyto issue and start accepting product from Canada again. Because that's been a dent in our exports for sure. That and millet pricing. I mean, millet's cheap out of the U.S., so that affects us somewhat. But, you know, when we were as high as $1,200 a ton for Canary Seed, now we're $600 a ton. Delivered CIF U.S. Yeah, right? So there's been a 50% reduction in value, and people are probably going to get more comfortable that they're not going to get hurt every time they buy something. And that's been the issue, and why we have seen sluggish demand here is, you know, people continue to get hurt by the prices.
Well, and the lower the price goes, I suppose the less their per unit carrying costs are. They can buy twice as much now. Yeah. And for the same currency bar.
Yeah, and they'll start to be a speculator, all right? And you know, and they'll have the same position as the grower. I've seen often where, you know, in rising markets, in destination buyers are quite happy to pay more, right? Happy to pay more tomorrow than they paid last week. And you know, that goes against a little bit what you think about a buyer.
Yeah.
But they want to see the market supported and firmer because it protects their positions.
Right.
So when we get into the other side of the market that we're in right now, you know, now is when the fear comes out from the buyer side, because, you know, that product might take 2 months to get to them, or they might be buying it December, or, you know, and they don't necessarily have a way to unload that risk between now and then, you know, because they're selling product in open markets. Some markets do, but they can forward sell. Yeah, you know, let's say in Europe.
They're speculating, and a cent a pound adds up in a hurry.
Yeah, and 5 cents is a big deal, right? So, and on, we were at 31 cents at the start of the marketing year for Canadian Canary Seed to the farmer with an act of God. You know, today we're at 22 cents, so we've lost, you know, 170, 180 bucks Canadian a ton, right? So, well, it is significant. But, you know, one would think we are starting to get towards the bottom now. You know, there is people that are at 18 to 20 cents for Canary Seed. You know, it'll all depend on what the farmer does in the fall. You know, do they move canola? You know, do they move canolas off? I see this morning again. What, you know, and so there's some pressure going to happen there, and then people will make choices what to sell and what to hold. And yeah, and we're probably going to get to some kind of bottom of the cycle. But, you know, I also don't think that this will be fixed this marketing year. Like, if you have cash flow requirements between now and Christmas, I don't think waiting till December 15th is the right time, right? If you need to pay FCC or your input bill in February, you know, don't wait till crop production week. Like we see that a lot. Actually, we see some years where people are waiting for markets to move higher, and at the end of crop production show on the Friday, we start buying grain like crazy, right?
Yeah, interesting.
And so that's a one time of year where I see kind of seasonal weakness in a sense, right?
Is there such thing as, I think you call it the John Deere blues in the United States or something? It's these payments that are due in February, and is there operating lines that need to be repaid by that time? Is that was spurs on some of the rush to sell in January?
Yeah, I think that's entirely what it is. Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's one thing as farmers, we're horribly optimistic. You go out and spend $1 million on inputs, put it in the ground and hope for the best, right? You have to be optimistic, right? So, but it also tends to lead our marketing where we think if we wait, it's bound to get better. And I don't think over the next 6 months it's going to be better. I don't think that at all. I think it can be worse.
Yeah.
Right. And so it'll play out somehow. Again, a little surprised that we dropped through 25 so easily. I mean, what's your statistical analysis show?
The technical analysis?
Technical. Did I say it's
Yeah, technical. Yeah, it's a swear word. So yeah, well, I think it was back in August the 2nd. I published the Canary Seed report and identified 25-cent level as potential support. If we lost that level, then we're looking down at 18 to 20 cents. So what happened is, that 25-cent level, there was a key Fibonacci level there. Also some previous supply dating, I would argue, back to 1995 really has been an area, a 25-cent level, an area of resistance. And then back to this, it's been resistance, I guess, up until recently.
And I would have guessed 25 cents was not going to be easy to go through.
Yeah.
Right. And we've bought quite a bit of product at 23, 22 now.
Yeah.
Right. So, and harvest has not started. So, I had a question from, one of our procurement guys last night. Said, do you think it's going lower? And I said, I mean, it's hard to know, but, at the same time, harvest hasn't started. So if people get in and yields are, if you've got a 3,000 pound yield and you're selling at 22 cents, what's that, $6.60 an acre? I mean, that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And, and I think that's the other key take home this fall is selling, dollars per acre instead of cents per pound.
Yeah.
And, people have to focus on that have big crops. I had a friend that had a, 55 bushel red crop and I said, sell it, right?
Yeah.
And it's a huge number per acre and now that was 2 cents ago, that market's now 23, not 25, right? So it just keeps kind of grinding down on it, right? There's a term, you're catching a falling knife, right? You're going to get a bit bloody right now, but it's kind of those that make the decisions kind of without motion that'll probably end up in a better place, right?
Well, there's a term in the trade, and we talked about it earlier, is you take the first loss, right? You will survive if you take the first loss, but if you let those small losses turn into large losses, eventually you'll be out of business, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard to do. It's extremely difficult to do. But if the market's trending lower, you just need to take the first loss, and you should have that level where you want to sell. If the price trends lower, you should have that predetermined when you build a crop in all essence.
And the problem with this as a grower is that a lot of guys don't have enough information, right? And we start to look for reasons why the market should increase, and in the red market, for instance, we'll talk about this in a couple of weeks, but I'm hearing people say, well, we don't think there's as many acres in Canada as StatCan says and everything. But on the other side of it, you got Australia coming with a big crop expected in the fall and at Christmas, right? So, you really got to look at what all the factors are. In Canada, the grower determines the price of Canary Seed. For the most part, yeah, we have some competitive, we have some competitors in the market, but they're fairly small, and the grower's yield and decision to sell is where the market will take us, right? It's not the trade. It's the grower's decision. That's what's going to drive it, right? And trade's been beat up a little bit for these prices coming down, but reality is that if the grower continues to sell it, it's got to get moved, right?
Yeah.
Like I can't take on 25-cent Canary Seed, and not have a home for it.
Right.
And then all of a sudden be at 20 and losing $100 a ton, and when our target margin's 50, right? So these things only have one way to go if the growers keep deciding that they're going to make the sales.
Canadian farmers, a lot of impact, a lot of impact, and a lot of force on this Canary Seed market.
Yeah.
Maybe we need a Canadian Canary Seed board.
No, we don't.
Yeah. No, and that, you brought up a point about pricing or making your decisions based on per bushel per pound. And I'm going to get myself in a bit of trouble here, but I see different schools of thought as you term, sell your grain based on per bushel or per pound and versus per acre, and make your decision on a price per bushel piece. And it just seems a little bit too cute on me. I don't know as a grower, you don't know what your bushels are going to be, but you do know your acres.
Yeah.
So your acres are what matters. Your bushels are speculative. You'll know sometime in September, maybe October. You got to make your decision on trade.
And I have probably the best Canary Seed crop I'd grown on our farm this year. We haven't started cutting it yet, but I think it's pretty strong. And I've continued to make sales through the year. Now, I can handle my risk a little differently than the average guy, but you hear a lot of people talk about, I don't want to cut a check, right? And pay out. But if the market is trending that hard, that quick, you could be in the money very quickly in some markets, right? But it's kind of a zero cost game. I mean, you can lose some in some years, but you can gain a lot in a heavy production year where you're expecting your outcome is high, right? And that's how I sell my durum. That's how I sell my canary. It's how I sold my lentils this year. I make those decisions all the way along, and I take on some risk, right? And and then the total pie at the end is bigger, right? But the other thing where you hear a lot in these markets, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but people are say some of this out of anger. It's part of the market cycle, right? And they just say, well, we'll lock the bins, yeah. And so in some of these markets, we need 50% of the bins to stay locked for 12 months, right?
Yeah.
And Canary Seed, they can stay locked for 15 years. We've seen this. Some of the bins stayed locked for 15 years, right? But it's just impossible to threaten any of these markets right now, right? So you have to really decide if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very difficult not to turn off your cash flow,
right?
Regardless of what business you're in. There's there's business requirements, but there's opportunity cost too. And you alluded to that with Canary Seed in that example, bidding it for 15 years. There's some difference in cost attached to that. Yeah, at some point.
The storage cost and interest cost. I mean, over 15 years. I mean, you kind of lost half your value, haven't you?
I don't know. Yeah.
Even over 15 years, the purchasing power of the money is, let alone the interest costs. So good point again. But yeah, the Canary's an interesting market. I'm not sure Not 100% sure where this trends, but I mean, there is people at 18 to 20 cents. It's very, very possible that that's where we end up. And, you know, at that price with today's input costs and, you know, I think people are realistic that we're not looking at a 10-cent Canary Seed value. That is gonna lock all the bins, right? But if a number is still profitable, depending on the yield, you know, I think you'll see this stuff move into the market. So,
Well, yeah, so I might be repeating myself, but if that 25 cent didn't hold, the next area of interest to me is that 18 to 20 cent range. And that was based on a couple factors, one of which is a Fibonacci level, which seems to play out in all these markets, whether anyone's looking at it or not.
right.
And also previous supply, that level too. So when I talked about supply, that was a support level. And previous, well, back to 2013, 12, 13 again. So yeah, and if it doesn't hold there, then she's going down to 13.
And 2013 was an interesting time because that's when we had that oversupply, huge crop, right? And so we had less export capacity at the port. We had less terminals in the country, and the basis got huge, right? And you know, I don't think we're going to be affected that way as an industry in durum and canola and wheat and barley, but we could be in the special crops, right? Because Canary requires a very specific cleaning design to meet the specs of the market, right? Green lentils require a different cleaning design, riser indents. In Canary Seed are short and long picks, and in lentils, you're lifting the lentils, you're tailing the longs. So there's only so much capacity, and I see that the capacity is starting to fill. Like we have basically almost bought enough Canary Seed for our program to the end of December. It's September 3rd or 2nd, right? But I don't know if it's the 2nd or 3rd. I guess it doesn't matter, but yeah, you know, so we're going to have a little bit of that 2013 influence where people just have to go to no bid. We're no bid on large greens today because we don't have the capacity to ship, and the buyers won't buy it for December, right? So that's where you start to see, you know, we're just required to go to no bid. We cannot physically buy it and ship it to anybody. Well, and we have not seen that for 12 years, but 2013 is the last time. Just all the years, 2013, 2014 in there, you know, and that 2013, 14 is, you know, this also created a lot of increase in capacity of the grain industry, right? And that's why you have Northwest terminals not running, right? The margins got beat up so bad for wheat, barley, canola. You know, G3 built a lot of terminals, a lot of export capacity, and you know, that's really hurt the margins in that side of the industry. Yeah, right. So, and the special crop industry put a lot of money out of 13. Those are profitable years. Put a lot of that money into assets, and you know, that has proven, you know, to not have worked well. Okay. So
Interesting. Yeah. So 18, 20 cents. We're at 22 roughly right now. 20, 20.
we're at 22 cents delivered now.
Some are at 18 already.
I think some are at 18 to 20. Yeah.
So
Now that might be because they don't have capacity, right?
that's correct.
Right. So, you know, I mean, that's when it starts to get hard to say what is the true market today. I'm calling the true market on Canaryseed 22 cents. No, but if growers push it at all off the combine, we will be at 20 or 18.
Yeah, what is the true market, right? There's limited supply at limited demand, I guess, at 22 cents. But there's more at 18 cents.
Yeah.
I couldn't eat. So yeah.
Yeah, now we're in this situation where we need more exports. If we had 100,000, 106,000 tons of exports as we did in 2021, well, you know, then it's really going to be bad. I mean, then 2/3 of your product has to stay in the bin. Not, you know, and half isn't a great situation either. But, you know, we've also seen rallies with about 2 years of supply. We've seen that in 07. So we need an outside catalyst though for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that catalyst isn't likely to be what you traditionally or might think it will be, or traditionally think it will be. It could be something totally unseen. I don't like to use the term black swan. I think that gets overused too often, but could be something to be a corn mandate.
Yeah, the war in Ukraine supported Canary Seed values, like in what was that, 2022? It supported values in that period, that war, right? Because it, lifted everything, right? Lifted all prices, including Canary Seed. So,
And a lot of people in the geopolitical space consider us the world being in the Third World War right now.
right.
It just hasn't been named that yet. And if that's the situation, say Canada, we enter into a kinetic war with another country, I mean, that could change things. That could happen anytime, right? And it could change things quickly.
Yeah, so I think the take home though is watch your cash flow requirements over the next 4, 5, 6 months. Yeah, because I don't think the market's going to come back to save you. Likely.
Yeah, and if we have that supply, again, just to reiterate, it's looking like how many years supply, do you think?
2 years.
2 year supply, right? So, yeah, that pipeline could get filled in a rather short fashion. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and on demand's the other side of it. We've seen some weird things this year. We've seen China come into the market. Traditionally they take 5,000 tons. This year they took 10,000. And so I watched very closely at this because they're using some for health food and they're using some for bird food.
Yeah.
But if you got a fad sweeps through China and 2% of their population start consuming Canary Seed, as human consumption product, well, they could sweep the cupboards bare inside of no time, right?
Yeah.
Now, I think what happened really was we had the tariffs on peas and some of these companies trade Canary Seed, and I think they just didn't have enough on their plate, and they started to import Canary Seed, and we're kind of picking a bit of a bottom, and that hasn't proven correct. And so I think we'll ship about 10,000 ton in 2024 crop year. We shipped about 10,000 ton to China, and we've never shipped more than 5. Wow, right? And some markets are down and some markets are up, for shipments, but the lower values are going to increase volumes.
So the health food component of that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we have a GARS, generally grass, generally recognized as safe registration in the U.S., and we got a human consumption registration in Canada. So you could trace the human consumption of Canary Seed back 500 years from Spain, right? And there's a bit of this leche de alpiste consumption in Mexico, which is they mix the Canary Seed with water and they drink the broth, and it's kind of health food, kind of a health food use. But we've never seen the inclusion of Canary Seed into bread and as a bread topping or into pasta or anything like that. In the Canary Seed Association, which I'm involved with on the board as a grower, we are spending some money trying to drive that human consumption component, but it's been very slow to tape off, right? And probably China is consuming more Canary Seed through human consumption than anywhere else. But again, it's a few thousand tons. Yeah. No, but Canary Seed is interesting. It's got 19% protein when it's dehulled. Yes, it's the high protein level. It's an ancient grain, so that fills a spot on the label. This company's got a grain and nut bar, protein bar with 10 ancient grains. If they added some Canary Seed, they could say 11. Right. And their competitor's got 12 and he adds 1. And so, it should fit into those. It's got really healthy oil profile, the highest oil content of any cereal. There's lots of really neat things about it. Gluten-free. It's gluten-free too. Yeah. Right. So, but it's just not, it just hasn't been picked up. So, we've tried to brand it as Alpiste in the food market, and because it sounds better than Canaryseed, right? I mean, when have you ever wanted to get up in the morning and have a bowl of Canaryseed, right? Dog don't hunt, right? So,
Maybe eventually.
yeah, so, might be a bit fibrous, but, really we need that human consumption to start picking off, if you look at quinoa in the U.S., I think quinoa in the U.S. is 20,000 tons, right? I mean, it was the UN crop of the year, grain of the year. I mean, it had so much health food attention to it, and it still is 20,000 tons. So, if we could start including it in breads, do the protein content or the nutty flavor, or as a topping, we might get some, we might get some traction in that human food market. But, I go to a meeting, we talk about it at the board level, and then I get all excited, and then I end up coming back to work, and then I got 14 other things on my plate, right?
What you need is some of those cold plunge guys and those social media influencers there, once they move off the cold plunge and their face cold ice or whatever they're doing, ice baths, you can get them doing that Canary Seed, and that will drive the market.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what it needs, somebody to really, focus on it as a food.
Yeah.
Right. And I've talked about this before with you, and, the food side of our industry is really outside of my knowledge. Right. So it would take me so much time, to get involved with it and sort out all the requirements and the food safety that, the rest of the business would burn to the ground.
Yeah.
Right. So, I focus on my knitting.
Yeah, that's right. Keep to your knitting. Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, that's interesting. So we're, just to recap, we're at, look at that, maybe my support level, possible support levels at 18 to 20 cents. It's level interest for me, but if that doesn't hold, my next level is down to 13 cents.
Yeah, I
Quite low.
I think there'd be a lot of people bet on prices at 15 cents before we, 16 cents before we could drop down there.
Yeah.
But, I guess never say never, but, I struggle to see us really below 18 cents. Some estimate prices are at 18 cents out today already, right? And, we're well into that harvest. The quality is pretty good.
Yeah.
Red lentils, I did not see a red lentil drop. We're already at 23 cents for reds to the grower. Didn't see that coming that quick. But at the same time, there isn't a lot of demand. And, Australia is projecting a big crop for December, which they always project a big crop. I mean, that crop's been in the ground for 4 months, and they got 4 more months to harvest, right? And so anything can happen in that crop too. But, if all these things play out, and it seems like when you really need one of these countries' production to fall apart, it never happens when you need it to happen, right? And so, it's going to be a mystery here what the winter brings, But I think my take home of all this, whether it's a green lentil or an Heston, even a red, is if you need cash flow in the early part of next year, your decisions should be made today, not tomorrow, right? And that's the take home. So,
yeah, be on top of it. Don't wait. Don't get complacent.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this has been great. And we'll see what this market does. And again, I wasn't making a prediction of 13 cents, but it's a level possibility according to my analysis of the price chart. So 18 to 20 cents is I would say a strong level of support. But if that breaks, then you can't dismiss 13 cents.
Yeah, and I'd probably take a bet that we're going to go there. But again, it's very hard to predict what this animal's going to do, right? Yeah. I was very negative Canaryseed pricing a year ago. We were at 36, 37 cents, and the product was there. It just kept coming to town, and right, and but we get into these extreme levels. I used to say $12 Durham was extreme, but it got to 23, right? Yeah, or maybe a little higher. So when you're at these extreme levels, it's super easy to predict where we're headed, right? But when you're at these levels, it's gonna get hard.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
okay, thank you, Trent.
Also been great. And yeah, we'll look forward to a couple weeks. Maybe we'll do a red lentil and pea one.
Yeah, and I mentioned this that us and a couple weeks ago. I thought this number would be out, but the statistical agency or bears in Australia stated a 1.7 million metric ton crop. We are gonna, and they got carry out. We're gonna have carry into this crop year plus probably a 1.5, 1.6 million metric ton crop. So those are both the negatives that are headed our way, and the Chinese pea tariff thing is there's just no resolution on it. Doesn't even seem like the federal government is even working on it, and that's what's made that market fall apart. We need China for the pea market. I mean, it can be 50% of our demand, and without it, it's detrimental. And pea acres are pretty solid, yields are pretty solid. Yeah. So we'll talk more detail on that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been great.